LT Cruz.
What's up?
Welcome to VCTV.
Thank you.
I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
For sure. This is a continuation of the military interview series that I started. The military interview series is to inform, inspire, motivate, and also to just give some guidance and maybe a little bit of a heads up to future soldiers, future officers is coming in. On like what they can expect, and just to give the civilians not a background, but a peek behind the curtain of what we go through on a day-to-day basis, and just a peek behind the curtain of what we do.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's get into it. LT Tiffany Cruz.
Yes.
How old are you?
I am 37. I just had a birthday in April.
Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles. I was born in West Covina. However, when my parents divorced, my mom moved to Sacramento, so I went to school in Sacramento, but was often in LA. So.
Okay. What's your sign?
I'm a Taurus.
Taurus.
I'm like Aries Taurus. I'm like on that cusp. I don't know how many people out there can relate, but you definitely fall under both categories when you're like that. I was born on Earth Day, so.
What day is that? Like what?
It's the 22nd, April 22nd.
April, okay.
Yeah.
I'm an Aries, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you get it.
The best sign. On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate your military experience up until this point?
I mean, like, what is the scale based on? Is probably an appropriate question.
One being, I hate it. It's not for me. I want to get out.
Okay.
Time now. 10 being, this is the greatest decision I ever made in my life.
So, I feel like this is a hard question to answer. And the only reason I feel like this is a hard question to answer, and you know just as well as I know.
Right.
You go through different things every day in the military that make you sometimes question your decisions.
Right.
However, the military has given me a stepping stone to a greater life. So in that sense, if I'm judging it off of that, then, it's pretty high up there on the scale. But we all definitely have our bad days, and on those days, I'm like, man, what did I do? What did I sign up for?
Right.
What am I doing in life?
Yeah.
And those are the days that would probably be like a 3 or a 4.
Nah, I feel you.
But yeah.
It's some days where, like me personally, I love it. It's like the best thing I ever did in my life. And there's some days where it's like, yo, if I could just get that DD-214 in my hand.
Inevitably though, like I will say, I tried going back to the whole civilian life when I had a break in service, and I know we're going to get into that later.
Yeah.
But I've never found anything that has provided me with such a sense of like, I'm doing something good, something better for myself, something that I believe in, other than, being in the military. And at the end of the day, being able to serve my country, as cliche as that sounds. So.
Being able to serve my
yes.
country. Okay.
Why are you laughing?
Okay. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's respectable. That's very respectable. All right, let's get into the real questions. All right, so what is your current rank in the Army?
I am a second lieutenant in the United States Army.
Okay. So second lieutenant, that means you're an officer, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference between being a commissioned officer and a non-commissioned officer?
So there's lots of differences. If you just base it off of like leadership responsibilities, as an officer, you're in charge of so much more. You're in charge of the welfare of a lot more people. You're in charge of really making things go around, whatever the intent is, coming down from the top. You're in charge of making sure that you're working collectively with your team to make that happen.
Right.
And sometimes it is a little bit more stressful. But it's a journey, and it's an experience.
Okay. Did you have to graduate college first before you joined? Like, in order to be an officer, like, is college necessary?
Yes.
To be a commissioned officer, is college necessary?
College is necessary. Some sort of degree. If you go into something that's more focused, such as like being a doctor or a nurse or something, you still need those credentials. So,
right.
You can't really do anything on the officership side of the house without having some sort of education.
Okay. Did you do ROTC first?
I did ROTC, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first explain to the audience what ROTC is, like, as far as just what it is as a whole, and how did you join ROTC?
Yeah, absolutely. So ROTC, first of all, is a commissioning program, and it's one of the many ways that you can commission into the military to be an officer. So I started on the enlisted side. My story dates all the way back to when I was 19 in 2004, and I came from the Air Force. So long story short, I applied to go to ROTC, and basically where I was at in my life, where I was at in my degree, and everybody's different. There's a 4-year option, there's a 2-year option, there's an active duty option, there's a progression option. I think there's like 4 different options for ROTC, and that's not even counting what it's like to go through OCS to be a commissioned officer.
Right.
But my route was a 2-year option.
Okay.
So I was active duty in the Army on the enlisted side as an NCO, and then I got picked up for ROTC. I think I was at Bragg for about 7 months by the time I got picked up.
Wow.
And I went straight into my program without any break-in service. And for me, it was 2 years. So I was going to school for my master's degree in social work. So you do your 2 years, and then at the end of that, if you have to, you're essentially like a dual student. So you're going for a major, but you're also going for your commission. So you have to meet the requirements and the requisites for both. So I did that. I got my MSW and I commissioned at the same time. It was simultaneous.
Okay. So once you join ROTC, is it a guarantee that you're going to get chose or earn a contract to commission into the Army? Like, what is that process like? Once you join and the time has come, whether or not you're going to actually commission?
So there's probably going to be some naysayers, but in my position, because I came in, I was selected as an ADO, which means I was active duty the entire time. And in those instances, like, you're going to commission as something. All you have to do is like pass your classes and make sure you pass the requirements for ROTC. Like, unless you do something crazy that gets you kicked out of the military, you're still under UCMJ when you're going through ROTC.
Oh, right, because you were active when you went through ROTC.
Right.
Okay.
So you still fall under all the civilian and the military, the rules and laws.
Right.
But in that sense, like, not to say that it's not hard, and I definitely stress, but it's very hard also to kind of get kicked out of the program in that sense, because there's so much invested, and really all you have to do is be on your grind and pass. But for the progression option, where you come in, let's say you're trying to do a 4-year degree, and you were in the reserves before, or like you're out now, and you come in that way, there's so much more that you have to go through, and it's not necessarily guaranteed until you get into your MS3 year. So your 2 most important years for ROTC are your MS3 year and your MS4 year. And your MS3 year is where you're going to get like the bulk of your OML points. That's where you're going to get the bulk of like everything that counts against you and stacks against you.
What is OML?
It's order of merit list.
Okay.
So there's going to be certain categories where like, oh, I volunteered this many hours, and you get points for that. And then at the end, they rack and stack all your points, and they take into consideration like what jobs you said you wanted to do, what you take a test now. My class was the first class to go through talent-based branching, which is what the Army is gearing towards now.
Right. To
fix the retention problem.
Okay.
So they take all that data, and then that's how you get branched. But when you're an MS1 and you're starting off on that base, and a lot of times it's 19-year-olds just coming in from high school who think they want to do this and they don't have any background experience, or it's people on the reserve side who want to make a change, and they have to fight. They have to fight for that active duty slot against everybody else. They're going to get racked and stacked against everybody else. They're going to get racked and stacked against those who already do have that ADO, because there's a certain percentage and a certain number that are going to get through, and the rest are going to be commissioned on like a reserve side of the house, or maybe a guard side of the house. So, yes, in some instances, it's, not to say automatic, because you can screw it up, but for the most part, it just depends what route you take to get in.
It's on you whether or not.
It's on you. It really is on you.
You got to mess it up pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. So as somebody who was active duty at the time during ROTC, and you had kids at the time, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
So how was juggling being a mother, being active duty, and also being ROTC, taking classes, going to FTXs, how was juggling all three of that and still trying to possibly maintain a social life?
So I would tell you it was very, very intense. I'm going to be honest and straight up because I know that we have people who are probably watching who want to know. But there are times where I would feel so tired and so exhausted that I just felt like I needed to cry. And I don't know if I went through the program with others that probably felt like that. But I would set my alarm for 5 minutes and I would let myself cry for 5 minutes. And it's like when that alarm went off, you got to go back to being a bad bitch because there's no other options.
Right.
There really isn't. But I think that it depends on what kind of degree path that you choose, what kind of outside support that you have. But in my story, it was difficult. Thank God I made friends that turned into family in the program. My class we were very, very tight knit. We were there to look out for each other. We were there for emotional support. And I feel very fortunate for that experience. But at the same time, my struggle, it was really hard. I had a plan for my kids. They were going to go, while I went through the program, they would spend the majority of the time, with their dad. And then when I could, I would bring them back and, we would spend time together. But I thought that would be something feasible during the program so I could focus as much as I could. Mm-hmm. And, life happens and it just doesn't work out like that. So, I did it all on my own.
Okay.
And there are some times where I look back and I'm like, dang, I really don't know how I made it through. And I don't know for everybody, watching or listening if they're spiritual, but for me, that was a big thing. I had to, I talked to God, I prayed to God. I was like, help me make it through on my hard days.
Right.
But if you want it, you'll find a way.
You gotta find a way.
You gotta find a way.
So how long have you been in the Army? How many years?
So in the Army, I've been in the Army since 2017.
So about 6 years? 18, 19, 20. Yeah, more five. About
almost,
five.
Yeah. 5 years,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. What ultimately pushed you to make that change from NCO to commissioned officer?
So for me, like I said before, I started my military career when I was 19. And at that time, it was just something that I felt that I needed to do in order to stop myself from going down a path that wasn't going to be beneficial for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And at that time, if you would have asked me at that age, I had no intentions of staying in the military,
right,
of making it a career. So when I finished my first enlistment, I had this huge break in service, 8.5 years. And during that time, I tried to transition back into civilian life. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy by any means. And I realized, wow, I know people are it's an honor to be able to put a uniform on every day. And it truly is. And it took that time for me to realize, I really made a mistake. And in 2015, I realized that I wanted to come back into the military.
What was some of the biggest eye-openers, in that break of service that could really... that was the distinction between civilian and military. What was some of the things that you were like, oh man, this is different?
So, specifically in front of my face, the things that I experienced was, there's that job security. There's that security that you're going to have a check on the 1st and the 15th. Mm-hmm. There's the healthcare security. But really, for me, it was doing something that was unique every day. I'm sure, regular civilians, they have something that is unique to them every day. But for me, I come to find that it was in the military. And it surprised me. It really did. I had to really explore why I was feeling like that.
Right.
And I just got down to, this is something that I really want to do. For whatever reason, it's been placed in my heart, and this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. But in 2015, when I decided to come back into the reserves, I knew at that point in time, I want to take this onto the officer side of the house. I want to be an officer. I want to be a social worker. And somehow I'm going to try to make it happen. And I couldn't do it in the Air Force. I spent 3 years in the Air Force trying to do it. And it was, for whatever reason, the stars weren't aligning. So I found a way to do it in the Army. And it's really weird the way it happens because you can't have that break-in service at all. So it's
right.
one day I was Air Force and the very next day I was Army. And
so like since you were, in the Air Force before you joined the Army, what are two of the biggest differences between the Air Force and the Army?
People ask me this question all the time. They're like, "Oh, do you regret like leaving the Air Force?" And it's like each career field has its own set of problems, and they definitely have their both sets of like pros and cons. But for me, the major differences that I experienced was the Air Force was a lot more political, and I'm not very good at playing the political game. It's something that I have to work on, because there's a certain level of having to play into that. In order to progress sometimes. And I wasn't good at that age. So it's definitely the political side of the house. And I was in security forces in the Air Force. So it's not like a normal Air Force position.
What is that?
Security forces is like, people are going to hate me for this, but it's kind of like MP and infantry, like meshed together.
Oh, okay.
It's not really as intense on the infantry side of the house unless you go into something specialized like PJ or whatever the case may be. But, I worked nights, I worked weekends, I worked holidays, and it was a lot.
It's a lot, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So other than that, also like the 4 days, I know that's going to sound crazy, but when I got to brag and they were like, you came at a really good time, like we're having a 4-day this weekend, like it's almost 4th of July, we have all these things going on. And I had to ask them what a 4-day was because I'd never heard of that before.
Right. And
they're like, what are you talking about? You get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And I thought that was really cool.
Is that not a thing in the Air Force?
No.
Oh, dang. I didn't know that.
I mean, they definitely, if you ask somebody who's in like a regular career field or a regular AFSC in the Air Force, like they have those days.
Oh, okay.
But if you're in security forces, like you're working regardless.
Oh, I forgot. Y'all are different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think MPs don't really get those like that either. Yeah.
I definitely feel for them because MPs you work regardless.
God bless.
There's got to be somebody there to work the streets. There's got to be somebody there to work the cases that come through.
Right, work the gates.
There's got to be somebody there. So it's like you don't get. It's not the same lens that other people have. I think that surprises people.
Right. So, what's your MOS?
I branch quartermaster. That's my MOS.
Okay, so
I say it like that because I wanted to do something completely different, but yes, I'm a quartermaster officer. Okay,
so what does that mean exactly?
Okay, yeah. So for those who are not too savvy with the lingo, I should say. So quartermaster deals with a lot of logistics. As a matter of fact, when you go to CCC or captain's career course, it merges into logistics and you become a logistics officer. But it's basically just the movement of troops and supplies to wherever you need them, whether that be the forward line, whether that be specifically like we're a brigade asset. What I'm doing now, we're a brigade asset. I work in the supply support area, and we're basically the warehouse. So units will order parts. It has to come to us, and we put them where they need to go, and then they'll come pick them up.
Okay.
And on the other side of that, if you need to churn things in, they'll bring it to us, and then we'll put it out to wherever it needs to go. So it's just like a lot of movement of important things that the Army needs.
Got you. I want you to briefly detail a busy day for you.
So as the SSA PL, let's talk about Mondays because Mondays are the busiest days. You come in for PT, and then after PT you got to do command maintenance. So basically what that means for those who don't know, you're going out into the motor pool and you're checking your trucks and your trailers. You're making sure everything turns on, everything works. You're annotating what's wrong with it so you can get it fixed. And then on the rest of the half of the day, like for me, I'm updating my rosters, I'm updating my slides, I'm updating my equipment so I can brief the commander. And then at the end of the day, you have to send up all the reports. And that's just that's a typical Monday. And typically those are some of the longest days. But in addition to that, you're making sure your troops are okay. You're making sure, you're checking in with your platoon sergeant. And for me, I have a chief, I have a platoon sergeant, and I have an NCOIC. So I have to take in everything that's going on the technical side of the house and as well as like the regular side with whatever is going on with my platoon, making sure that we're mission ready and able to go forward for the rest of the week.
Okay. So after you graduated, well, after you did your 2 years with the ROTC program, what's the very next step as far as before you get to your duty station as a second LT?
It's BULLOC.
BULLOC.
So yeah, it's basic officer leadership course. And it all happens so fast. It happens so fast. Like you graduate and then like you have your date for BULLOC obviously before you graduate. But all the things that are happening in between that time that you graduate and then everything that you have to do in order to go to BULLOC. Like for instance, for me, I was in North Carolina. So I knew before I went to BULLOC, I was going to get stationed in Hawaii. So I had to like sell my house, get all my stuff packed up.
Yeah.
I had to send my kids, they went on their summer vacation. And it was extended at that time because I had like 4 months of BULLOC. But yes, it's just a lot and it happens very quickly. And you kind of have to have a plan before you get to that point as to how you're going to attack it. Because it's easy to get swept up with everything that's due. So you go to BULLOC. My BULLOC was about 4 months. I got there in June, graduated in October. And you're just there. You live in the hotel and you go to classes, you go out to the field, and it's supposed to teach you about your job and what you're going to encounter in like a bigger picture type of view. Not really. I wouldn't say BULLOC prepared me to be a second lieutenant PL in the SSA for the 25th ID.
Right.
But it gives you just like a general overview of what your job is going to be for the future.
Okay. Okay, so after BULLOC, or BULLOC, how do you say it?
BULLOC.
BULLOC.
BOLC, BULLOC, yeah.
BULLOC. Okay, so after BULLOC, what's next after that? Is there another school?
No. I don't know if there's a situation where some people go to like... Actually, there is, because I know one of my MS4s when I was in MS3, he branched quartermaster. He went to quartermaster school, and at Fort Lee in Virginia, you could go to rigger school. It just depends on like what route you're going as a quartermaster officer. So he did that following BULLOC, but in my case, I wanted to get here and start my job.
Okay, so
it's dependent.
Okay, so BULLOC is kind of like AIT.
Yes, yeah, BULLOC is AIT for officers. Yeah.
Okay, what's the difference between BULLOC and OCS?
So I think a better question would be, what's the difference between ROTC and OCS? Because after OCS, you would still have to go to BULLOC depending on...
So ROTC is that step before BULLOC.
Yeah.
Just like OCS is that step before BULLOC.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference between ROTC and OCS?
So ROTC, you're going to school to get your commission, but you're also going to get a degree at the same time. OCS is a very fast-paced, I don't want to say advanced program, but it's like 15 weeks.
Okay.
You go to school for 15 weeks and you do all the requirements that you do in ROTC.
Right.
You do that in 15 weeks. And then you commission as an officer after those 15 weeks if you pass everything.
Okay. So, because my boy just graduated from OCS and BULLOC, and he was prior enlisted, like he was an E4. So how did you get to go to ROTC? Like how was that decided whether you go to ROTC or you go to OCS?
So they're two completely different programs. You can apply to go to OCS, you get selected, you go to OCS. And they're both application based. So OCS is a different way to commission as an officer. It's a different entity than ROTC. I actually applied for OCS twice and it just didn't end up working out.
Okay.
Which is how I ended up getting into ROTC inevitably. But it just depends. If you have a degree already, you can go to OCS. But if you don't, then you got to go to ROTC because you have to have that education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hawaii is your first duty station as an officer, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay. What was the hardest part about transitioning from ROTC to BULLOC to now you're actually in the position?
Oh my God.
And you got to actually do it.
So much. Like my issues started when I was trying to get all my things packed up so that I could go to BULLOC. And that was an issue in itself. I actually had to call one of my mentors who helped me get into ROTC. And basically what had happened is I scheduled my move. The movers came. They were a day late. They spent 2 hours at my house the day that they got there, packed up my kitchen, and they left and never came back. And I was freaking out because I had to get my kids to California and then leave to go to Bullock, like all within this week time span.
Yeah.
So I had to call like the director of the program, and I was like, this is what's going on. So they had to get an additional crew out there to pack my house. And just finishing that and finishing the sale of my home, that was my first house. That was like my first buying and selling of a property.
Right.
So it was all very stressful. And then when I got to Bullock, we ended up getting kicked out of the hotel that we were in Bullock for the Afghanistan mission. Basically, they were bringing them over. Whoever the government had promised that they would, whoever helped us over there, they had to bring them over here and help them get visas and things like that. So they didn't have anywhere to house them. So they picked Fort Lee, and I think there was one other base that they had picked because that was where there was their most room. Mm-hmm. So they kicked out all the soldiers who were going to school there and put them in different hotels around the city.
Right.
But my hotel was 45 minutes away, one way. So just having to navigate that, and then having to navigate like getting to work on time and driving home. And then there was even a situation, we went out to the field to do our FTX at the end. Mm-hmm. And when we got back, they were like, you guys have to move hotels again.
Dang.
And it was like, I don't want to do this. Like, we've been here for 4 months. We unpack our shit. We use like, the dresser in the hotel room. And I've never done anything like that before. Yeah. So I'm like trying to pack all this stuff. And I have extra things because I sold my house. Yeah. I had my kids like, in a hotel before they left. So I have unaccompanied baggage. Right. So I don't have just a suitcase like a lot of my other classmates had. Right. I had like a tough box and 2 different suitcases. It was just a lot. So towards the end of Bullock, I actually had to schedule another move for them to come pick up my unaccompanied baggage to send here. And there was just so many moving pieces that they don't really talk about that aspect of like, oh, if you have a PCS to OCONUS, like it's going to be different than a regular PCS. And then getting here and trying to get my stuff, trying to find a house. I bought my condo while I was in the field in Bullock. I didn't even see it. I saw it. My realtor was very patient and very flexible. She would come look at the houses for me. She would send me 360 videos. Yeah. So I ended up buying my condo while I was in the field in Bullock. I found my kids at school first, and then after finding a good school for them is how I found like where I was gonna have to live. Right. So prior to coming here, I didn't actually see my residence in person, which is very unnerving, especially the price of housing here.
Yeah. You never know what you're gonna get, really.
You really don't.
It looked good and on the phone, but
you have to find somebody who's you got to go with your gut. Like right. My realtor, she's very trustworthy. She's amazing. Right. I tell everybody about her because she really made magic happen for me. But when I got here, you come from, this is probably like Hawaii specific, but I came from a larger house in North Carolina, and coming to a smaller square footage, trying to fit all your crap like into one area, and just the dynamic for people here is different than North Carolina. So they're like, where do you want this stuff? Hurry up, make a choice. Right. And I'm just like dying on the inside, like I'm gonna cry when you guys leave because I feel so overwhelmed. But trying to get all that set up, it was a lot longer than a regular stateside PCS would have been. So it was challenging. It was challenging to say the least.
Okay. What are 3 keys to success that you would give somebody else who's getting ready to become a platoon leader?
I would definitely say, in my experience, ask as many questions as you can. Ask as many questions as you can. Even if you think it's dumb, ask it. Find a mentor ASAP. Find a mentor in the program that you're in. Find a mentor wherever you're going. I don't necessarily have a solid mentor here yet in Hawaii. I've been looking for one. And be picky. Like, be picky about who you're choosing because you want that person to fall under a certain criteria based on where you're trying to go in your career. Because if you find a mentor who has a different path, it's not yes, some of the things will be the same.
It's not compatible.
But it's not compatible. Yeah, it's
right,
like,
right.
it's a working relationship.
Yeah.
So I know having a mentor is very valuable to the direction of your career. And then lastly, it's going to be twofold, but like network your ass off and believe in yourself. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's the magic equation. Like sometimes I have to convince myself harder than other days that I'm made for this, I can do this. Like, it's challenging, but you gonna stick in there and see it through. We all have our days, but
networking is very important.
Networking is I feel like almost one of the number one things in the military.
That's something I tell people all the time, like having the phone numbers of people you need to contact, having the email addresses, having the resources, just knowing who to ask what.
100%. Right. Not even just having that information, but actually utilizing it.
Right.
Push yourself out there. Push yourself outside of the box. I think one thing that draws me also to this career field is like I wake up every day and we're doing so many different things that I never feel like I'm inside this comfort zone. I'm always in new territory. I'm always feeling like, damn, I pushed myself outside of the box today. This feels really uncomfortable.
Right.
But it gets to the point where you have to learn to be okay in living in that uncomfortableness. And that's what propels you forward so much more than other career choices.
Okay. Have you dealt with any resistance in your time, leading your platoon, as far as you're trying to lead a platoon and you are having a hard time getting cooperation, from people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like a certain level of buy-in specifically for the soldiers in your platoon on like the lower level. They've been there already and they've seen a lot. They've seen leaders come and go, as we often do, right? There's only a certain amount of time that we get to spend in a certain position. Right. So they've seen how it was before and they see this, new person come in trying to change it. Right. And hindsight is 20/20, but we try to change it into something better, right? And sometimes that takes buy-in. Well, I would say every time it takes buy-in, but in order to get to that buy-in, sometimes it's a lot more difficult.
So how do you get them to buy in?
It's really taking their feedback and seeing where they want it to go. Like, you guys have been here this whole time. Tell me everything.
Right.
Tell me the good. Tell me the bad. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you don't want anymore. And I think that's one of the challenging things being in the position that we are in, because we have to find a way to take everything that they're telling us and make it happen.
And
sometimes like you're stuck in this weird middle ground where it's like, I know I need to do this for them, but how am I going to get also buy-in from the top? Like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you kind of get it from all angles.
Right.
But at the same time, like in that same sense for other leadership that you have to work with, as a female in this position, I do feel like it's a little bit more difficult because we get that pushback.
You're taking my question from me. You're taking my question from me. So how do you think it's harder to be a woman in that type of leadership position as a platoon leader
than a man? Like harder?
Yeah,
than,
like
than
harder
than my male counterparts.
Yeah, like do you think you have a harder time just getting people to either buy in or just follow than it would, say, a man?
I do feel like that. I almost hate admitting to that, but I do feel like that because we're automatically kind of viewed as like, we don't know what we're doing. Maybe there's some females out there that don't experience that, but a lot of times in my experience, I do get that. And you almost have to have this sense of over self-confidence. Like,
yeah, I was going to ask.
I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what are some of the stereotypes that you may have either heard or you are aware of when it comes to, women leadership?
We don't know what we're doing. We're too soft. We care too much. It's just a mixture of all those things that you do have to battle every day. And there's sometimes where I come into work and I feel like I can't be myself. I can't be myself because I have to put on this facade of all these other things in order for people to think that I know what I'm doing. And that can be exhausting in itself. But once you get through that initial and you're just like, you know what, I am who I am, and eventually you're going to see it. Like, it's almost like I have to give faith in that it's going to come with patience and with time.
Yeah. There's this image of what the quote unquote prototype leader looks like, and usually it's a white man. He has a stone face on, and like he just has a certain type of personality, and if you deviate from that, then you're not looked at as competent.
Let me tell you, I deviate from that so hard. Like I don't fit that at all. I am a caring person, but I like to approach life on a more positive side.
Right.
And in that sense, like if I don't laugh at myself, if I don't laugh at like how ridiculous I am sometimes, or sometimes when I make mistakes, like life would just be too heavy and I wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do it. And that's just who I am. And I know there's, leaders out there who are different in that sense. But I do, you kind of have to be well-rounded. Like I do have my serious side. I have my side where it's like, hey, you're talking to an officer right now. Like, what do you, don't come at me like how you're coming at me.
Right. And
I think there are more instances like on the female leadership side of the house where we kind of have to be like, who do you think you're talking to? Right. I can think of 2 instances where I've had to kind of stand behind my rank and be like, what the fuck are you saying right now?
Yeah.
So, but I do feel like sometimes we have to stick up for ourselves more than maybe our male counterparts.
Okay. I'm gonna get into some random Army questions.
Okay.
Do you think every rank should be allowed to live off base and receive BH?
This is so yes and no, and I'm gonna tell you why. Yes, because I've seen the barracks life. Like I said, I've
I lived in the barracks for my first 6 months here.
I come from the Air Force, and like regardless of what people say, those standards weren't very well either. So just that low level of living, I don't think that it's okay. I don't think that it's okay. No. But on the other hand, I know a lot of young people come into the military and those young people are stuck in the barracks, but there's a certain level of maturity. Like you have to know how to handle your finances. You have to know how to be responsible.
Right.
And sometimes that's just not there. So yes and no, unfortunately. Yeah. But I do think the standard of living needs to be raised by a lot because it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
This is probably the worst Hawaii Schofield. It's probably the worst barracks I've seen.
Situation?
I came from JBLM. JBLM had top-notch barracks. I mean, we had a full kitchen.
Really?
We had a washer and dryer in every room.
Oh, it was like a little apartment.
Yeah, we had 2 rooms. Each room had combination locks. Like, it was nice. I loved them. I got here, had no kitchen. Everything just looked super. Like not like 1900s. Like it just.
No, I've seen the barracks here, and they definitely
elevators break all the time.
Yeah, they need to upgrade that situation.
Yeah, that's terrible. What is your definition, or not? What's your definition? What is toxic leadership to you?
To me, toxic leadership is not taking into account on the lower level real issues, not listening to real issues, not even to the point where like, okay, you're listening to it, but you're not making action on it.
Right.
Toxic leadership, I also feel like is that buddy leadership. Like I've definitely seen command teams that are buddy, like you've gotten into that position because you're buddy, and you're not leading effectively. Like it's not fair.
Right.
Like you have this one lens that you're looking through, you're not taking into account everything else. Yeah. I think that's part of toxic leadership. I think toxic leadership also entails, not listening to your soldiers and where they want to go in their career path and being like, it is what it is. You're here to do a job.
Yeah.
I feel that's kind of a little bit toxic as well. I know everybody has their own definition, but those are just some of the things that I've seen.
Okay. All right. So what is your definition of just regular leadership? You know, you go to the board, they're like, what's your definition of leadership? Yeah. And, there's a sentence but what is your definition of leadership?
I think my definition of leadership is truly being a part of the team. Like, you're in the shit with your people. You're not just ordering them what to do. You're doing it with them.
Right.
And you're doing everything you can as a unit to be successful as a unit, not just, one entity. And I think it takes all of that in order to be successful. And if you can be successful in that, then, you're a good leader. You care about your people, you care about their needs, but you also care about the mission. And I feel like that lower, like, you care about your people and you care about your needs, inevitably that's going to make the mission go around as well. And it takes all of that.
Okay. How do you feel about the Army's current height and weight standards? Do you think they are unfair toward women and how they get measured and taped?
I wouldn't necessarily say unfair toward women. I would say I think the height and weight standards are bullshit, to be honest, because I've seen people who work out who can't pass height and weight.
Right.
And they're in like the top shape of their life. Mm-hmm. I've seen people who are overweight clearly and either need to go on some type of program or figure out what it is that they're trying to do and get out, who end up passing. And it's like every time I see somebody get taped, it's a different way. Mm-hmm. So I really don't feel like there is a standard that's being stuck to in that sense. And I think that I really think they need to get rid of that, in all honesty.
Right. I think it should be, if you can pass a PT test,
then you could pass a PT test.
And then you're good. Like, it doesn't matter how big you are.
That height and weight, I just don't. It feels like a waste of time.
It is a waste of time. And especially like how they tape guys' necks and waists. They tape y'all. I mean, not taste. They tape y'all's hips. That makes zero sense.
For some reason, I didn't realize that males didn't get their hips.
No, we get our neck and we get our stomach. That's it.
How do I know?
They tape y'all
it's
hips.
Everything, yeah.
And it's like, what else they
tape? And you got people standing in there like trying to make their necks a different size and shit. And I'm like, what are you? What is going on right now?
Right. I just think it's just not fair.
No,
it's not fair
I agree. Yeah, I think they need to do away with the height and weight.
It's just it just doesn't make any sense to me. No. What's your opinion on the new Acft?
I think whoever invented it is definitely a CrossFitter. I feel like it has a lot of functional fitness in it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, functional fitness is a lot of what we do every day.
Right.
So in some sort of sense, I think it's beneficial. In another sense, it's kind of... It's a weird dynamic because a lot of people don't do functional fitness. They don't do CrossFit workouts. They do regular, weightlifting and stuff in the gym. So it's just kind of crazy.
It's a little unconventional.
It's unconventional, but at the same time, it's unconventional because we've not done it before.
Right.
We usually do just push-ups and sit-ups and run. That's what we do.
Right.
But I do think functional fitness you do it every day. You're lifting your rucksack. You're rucking with your rucksack, you're picking shit up, you're putting it back down. Like, you have to be versatile in those movements, which is why I think, they're leaning more towards that way. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's something new. Yeah. And it's different. And there's that level of buy-in.
Yeah. So what do you say to people who, because, there's chatter amongst amongst the people, amongst the soldiers, NCOs, officers, amongst the people in general.
Amongst the people.
Amongst the people, it's chatter. It's that this Acft is geared toward, or it favors men because most of the events are strength based.
So I think before the new changes were published, I think maybe not necessarily geared towards men, but definitely geared towards people who are versed in CrossFit, who know how to do the movements.
Right.
If you go to a CrossFit class, a lot of it is gymnastics. It's not even based on how much you can pick up and put down.
Okay.
You just get strong in doing everything over time. But a lot of it is gymnastics. And I personally like the changes because they took the leg tug out and replaced it with a plank, which is something that everybody can do.
I'm going to give you a little pushback.
Okay.
I'm at PT. Mm-hmm. People don't... So, all right, so we just had a mock Acft not too long ago. A lot of people are doing the plank wrong.
What do you mean by like...
Like, their backs aren't straight, they're slouched.
Oh, they got the dip?
They're slouched in.
Yeah.
And they're getting 2 and 3 minutes.
Okay, so let me ask you, those same people, could they do the leg tuck?
I don't know. I think, me personally, it doesn't matter to me, either way, honestly. But me personally, after seeing everybody do it, a lot of them are doing it wrong with the plank. And I think one to two leg tucks is easier than
a 2.5 minute plank.
A 2.5 minute plank.
To 4 minute plank. Yeah.
A 2.5 minute plank. That's just my opinion.
I do think too, though, in that sense, it takes so much longer to get graded and go through the ACFT than it does a regular APFT.
It's so many events.
It's a lot of events, so it takes twice as long.
It
takes twice as long. We're doing the ACFT for what, like an hour and a half?
Yeah, but I prefer the ACFT, me personally.
I mean, I do like, each side has its pros and cons, right? You kind of just have to roll with it. And like I said before, the changes, I didn't like it. I don't want to do no fucking leg tucks. Like, let me do some toes to bar. Like,
yeah.
There is never a point in time where I am like on a bar sideways. I don't know if that's to like, you know, when you're going across rope and like that's the movement to, you know, kind of make that based on something that you do on a regular basis. But I don't know, I'm up in the air about it at this point. It definitely, each side has its pros and cons, but I'm glad that they made the changes that they made.
Same. Do you prefer the ACFT or APFT as presently constructed ACFT?
I think I prefer the APFT in all honesty. Yeah, I do.
APFT is so bland. Like,
it's bland,
the
but
ACFT
it's quick.
Fun.
You go in, it's quick. You do your sit-ups, you do your push-ups, you do your run, and then you're done. Like the ACFT, I mean,
it's just more enjoyable for me.
Why?
Because it doesn't seem like we're doing a PT test. It just seems like we're just doing a workout.
You're doing a workout with your friends?
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, that's true too.
People are pushing each other, and we're doing the sled drag carry and push-ups. Everybody's just kind of waiting in line, and then we do push-ups real quick.
I can see that side of it too. Yeah,
it's just more enjoyable.
It'd be interesting if you did a poll like across the board of people which they enjoy the most.
And if I'm being completely honest, the ACFT standards are pretty low.
Yeah, they are.
Which
since the changes that they made, I feel like they are pretty low.
Right. I'm not,
which helps more people pass. But at the same time,
That's why I said I don't know how that translates into promotion points. But I don't know that as of yet. But it's definitely easier. Yeah. It's not as much pressure.
I think the push-ups are easier too.
The T push-ups.
Yeah, I feel like it's. Maybe because the standards are lower in that aspect, but
it's easier. But it's harder to max though.
Over time, yeah.
Yeah, because doing 65 or something like that.
Yeah, that's
T
a lot.
push-ups,
that's a lot.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I think 65.
But you know
regulars,
what? Something that you had said previously, how people do the plank wrong. They do those push-ups wrong too.
They do them wrong.
They be having
People can't see me, but they doing it crazy. They do it crazy. Arms don't be extended.
Yeah, they got the dip in the back too. Yeah, it's not a straight line.
Especially when it gets about 35, 40. You start seeing.
You know what though? Those are the same problems that were on the APFT too. If we're being honest, not everybody was doing the push-ups right.
Yeah. You see, the problem is or not necessarily the problem, because sometimes it can be beneficial. It's up to the grader.
It's up to the grader.
Every grader is different.
It's up to the grader.
It's just like a height and weight. Every taper is different.
Yep.
It's just depending on who you get. Do you feel like the Army does a good job of handling sexual harassment and assault in the workplace?
Oh, we're gonna get serious now.
I'm coming with some stuff now. I'm coming with it.
I'm gonna go ahead and say no. I don't feel like that. I don't feel like. I know they're moving towards that direction with the changes that they're making in programs and things like that, but I think so much. Through my lens, I think there's so much harassment that takes place that, especially on the female side of the house, down to just comments that are made to joking that's made.
Have you
Just
personally?
to the point where it's all the time. Ever since I started my military career, I'll come into the office and it'll be jokes. People are joking about things along the lines of that topic. Or they're saying things, and it's normal conversation, right? It's just,
is it normal?
I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but I feel like it just comes with the culture. It comes with just kind of, and that has become normal.
Yeah.
And I can't say, for how it was before I came in, but I do see that a lot. And there aren't a lot of people who are like, hey, Don't fucking
wrong.
say that. Don't talk like that.
Right.
You know, because you don't. It's just it is what it is. I don't mean
Right.
to laugh about it, but it's like
Yeah.
it's really gonna take a lot more people to be like, hey, we don't talk about that shit here. We don't talk like that here.
Right.
It's professional here. Because then people are like, well, damn, no, I can't be myself.
Yeah.
Or you know, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very sticky subject too. You have to be careful about it.
Yeah. So question.
But I don't.
Well, no, go ahead. Finish.
I don't think that there's a good job being done, but hopefully it's trending in that direction.
So, because I've had this conversation a few times. So, I say all the time, it's not an Army issue. I think it is it's a human issue.
It's a human issue.
It's a human
I agree.
issue. You know,
I agree 100%.
The army can bring you in. It's like a job application. You know, when they bring you in for an interview, you don't tell them that you're lazy, that you don't show up on time. You gotta present your best self. You know, but when you get in, that's when your true things start to show. And you start to get written up and stuff like that. The army can only do but so many classes, you know, but so much retraining and stuff like that. It's up to the individuals to just change themselves. And then also the people in the workplace can do a better job of, you know,
right. And on that sense, when I was like, you know,
policing it up,
people don't police it up. And it's going to take us to be like, you know, we don't talk about stuff like that here. We don't say things like that. Like,
it really falls. It's not a broad and like, it's not on the broad of the army, like the broad end of the army. It's on like the internal units. It starts with that commander, with that first sergeant, that sergeant major, and then it trickles down to those platoon sergeants, and then those platoon leaders, NCOs. Those are the ones who really can change the impact of the unit. That's who it really falls on, to be honest.
And in that sense, when you look at it, like, let's take Fort Hood, for instance, right? Fort Hood has been in the spotlight for a while with all the things going on there on the sexual assault and harassment side of the house.
Right.
And it has to do with a lot of, you know, higher ups. So you create this culture, and then you gotta figure out how to fix it. And it's not easy.
Right.
But,
Do you think the Army as a whole really gives equal opportunity to everyone, as they say?
I do think they give equal opportunity. I'm sure there's other people out there maybe listening or maybe viewing and that have other experiences. But in my experience, I've seen a lot of equal opportunity. And I know that's something that's harped on often as well. But yeah, I do. I think the Army makes it fair in terms of like you have to work really hard for what you want out of the Army. You got to figure out where you want your career to go, and you got to work to get there.
Right.
Like, let's just take for instance my case, how I wanted to be an officer. Like, I wasn't just handed that shit.
Right.
Like, I had to do everything I could to get into that position, and I feel like it's like that across the board. It really is.
Right. I tell people all the time, you know, I know there's instances where, you know, certain leaders can potentially prevent you from doing things just because they don't like you, or they may not, or they may be racist, or discriminatory, whatever. But as a whole, I think whatever you want to achieve in the Army, you can do it. There's a system. There's an example, a blueprint laid out. If you follow that blueprint, you're gonna be successful. It's up to you. I do
think, like, I've definitely been told no before, and I'm the type of person, like, okay, you gonna tell me no? Like, I'm gonna go find somebody who's gonna tell me yes. Like, you not finna stand in the way of what I want to do.
There's a lot of checks and balances in the Army. Like, if
you know, maybe that person who told you no didn't see like one thing. Like, you gotta find that person who's really gonna be like, okay, yes, like you have everything you need. Like, you meet all the criteria. Like, yes, let me, you know, back you.
Right.
But there's also those instances too where, you know, you do get that. And I feel like that falls under the line of toxic leadership as well. Like, how you gonna...
For sure.
Like, really, you're going to tell me no on something, you know, for whatever that case may be. But as a leader, like, it's your job to... You got to help me, too.
Right. All the soldiers, all the NCOs listening, read up on your policies or your unit
100.
policies. Know all your checks and balances. Like, know your IG's number. Know, like, your sergeant major's office. Know who's above him. Just like we have a bunch of EO reps. Like there's a bunch of different
Equip
checks
yourself.
and balances.
Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
It's a lot of different checks and balances to where you can get a second opinion on something for sure. Do you think we should be allowed to wear? Well, not we. Do you think men should be allowed to wear beards?
To a certain extent, yes. I understand, like, they're messy and ungroomed. Like, I get it. Then no.
Yeah.
But I mean, y'all can be responsible, right?
yeah. I think
sure. I do. I don't really see.
It doesn't hinder the job.
No.
This whole thing of, you can't get the seal in the gas mask, that's been debunked. You can definitely get a seal with a beard. I mean, unless yours is like Rick Ross or James Harden.
There's standards, right? You can't have it like, super long, but I really don't
if yours is like Rick Ross, James Harden, then it's like, okay, obviously you can't. But a normal beard, you can get a seal. It's, the technology is, you can get a seal.
I'm with y'all. I stand with y'all on that one.
There we can see. You see, look, I have this gripe. Just a slight gripe. Women, y'all got everything right now. Y'all can do the nail colors, earrings, we can do highlights too.
Okay, yeah, but this, like, talking to me about those type of things it's different for me because I came from the Air Force. We could have French tips in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Like, as long as it's natural, like your hair is natural, like you can have that in the Air Force.
Yeah.
You could wear earrings in the Air Force. So when I came over to the Army and they were like, "What are you doing wearing earrings in uniform?" I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
It was different. It was a different culture for me.
Right.
So I had to learn to adapt to that. But I mean, I get it. Y'all are to wear like clear nail polish on your nails, aren't you, to make it look nice?
I don't care about nail polish, to be honest. I want to wear my beard.
Okay, don't say we got everything. You guys got something.
Y'all got everything. Like, y'all got everything. No, I'm not going to say everything. But y'all got it better as far as the grooming standards. Y'all definitely
I know that's a very large point of contention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think we should be allowed to wear hand tattoos?
Yes and no. So if you're in a career field where you need to blend in, if you're in a specific field where you're like going out and you need to, not have identifiable features on yourself like that where you can't cover, then I obviously no. Like, that's not going to be good. You're going to put yourself at risk and in danger in that type of scenario. Okay. So it's a yes and a no. I know, having a hand tattoo doesn't make you bad at your job,
right,
or make you unable to perform your duties, but in the sense where you're in your career field or something specific where you need to be able to hide things like that, then it's not going to be a good thing.
Okay. The last two questions I have. Give me two things that the Army is doing really well right now. It could be anything that the Army is just doing well on.
I think their fight for the People First initiative, I think that's a step in the right direction. Like, because we're not just this. Right. Like, we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different things. And we're not just this. We made a collective decision to put this on so we could do one collective thing, right? To fight for our country. But we're not robots. And I think I really like that. I really do. And I think for the second thing, man, I don't really know. That one kind of caught me off guard. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to come back to that one. We might have to pause.
Okay.
What would you say?
That the Army's doing well?
Crickets. We're terrible.
Wait. Hold up. I'm trying to think about me personally. Like, what are they doing? Oh, the new change of you don't have to go to ALC, BLC in order to get promoted to sergeant and staff sergeant. If you got the points and you pass the board, you're promotable. Then you can just put the rank on. You got a year to go to those schools. 'Cause waiting for those schools to be brutal.
It can.
Yeah, so I think that's one good change that happened.
I think too, and I know this is probably an unpopular opinion, but I know they are trying really hard with like the whole the SHARP programs and stuff like that.
They are.
I know I know that they've heard the collective, like, damn, we need something in place.
Yeah.
And I think they're, as slow as it may seem that it's going, I think they are trying to, you know, move in the right direction. And it's going to take all of us.
Yeah.
But I do think that's good too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now give me 3 things that the Army needs to change.
Damn, 3 things that the Army
3 things need to change, or 3 policies need to be changed. So just 3 things or across the board needs to be changed out the Army.
I think one thing off the top of my head, I've been trying to get into a specialized career field, and I have the credentials to do so. And it's been very, very hard to get into what I'm trying to get into. And I don't understand. There's a level of not understanding for me, because it's something that has been said, like, hey, this career field is really hurting for people, but you make it so hard to get into it, even if you have what you need to be in that position. And I think there needs to be.
Can you say, like, what's
okay? Yeah. So
what's the hurdle that's stopping you from getting to that career?
So the hurdle for me is being stationed in Hawaii, which is absolutely ludicrous. Like,
so what's like the specific hurdle though? Like, are they saying you have to be here for a certain amount of time?
They're saying that you can't apply for the program while I'm in Hawaii.
Okay. So there needs to be a change to where
I just
if you meet the credentials, it shouldn't matter where you're at.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a really huge point of contention for me right now. Just because, like, you know, I came in to do something very specific. I know what I want to do, and I know what I need to get there. And that's disheartening for me to be like, damn, I'm here.
Right.
But I'm also here in Hawaii, so, like, it's a no. Like,
right.
It doesn't add up in that sense. And I think there's a couple other career fields also that are kind of collectively have boundaries like that as well.
Okay.
And I do think, you know, if you're hurting in that career field and you're on the net saying, like, we need people for this career field, why are you making it so hard to get into?
Right.
That's one thing. But I think another thing is, you know, living situations. I think the standard of living is a little low.
As far as what, the barracks? Or
as far as, like, housing in barracks. And
okay.
I think there needs to be a change to that. And the last large thing for me is healthcare. I don't know if it's because of the change in systems, but I don't feel that the healthcare is up to par. You know, I have personal stories that I will choose not to share, but I've been in situations where it's like, what the fuck? Like, this is not okay. This is not normal.
Okay.
So I do think that they could do a better job of, you know, caring for us.
Yeah.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Okay.
Because those are basic things, right?
Right.
So I think that those things they need to do a better job of focusing on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, LT Cruz.
Yes.
I appreciate you stopping by. It was
great
to hear your story. For sure. It was great to hear your story. You know, Air Force, NCO in the Army, enlisted, and now you are a second lieutenant.
Yeah.
Platoon leader.
Yeah.
That shows to everybody out there that sometimes it doesn't matter where you start. You know, there's different avenues to get to where you want to go. You just gotta.
There's always a different avenue. I guess my closing comments would be, like, don't ever give up on yourself. If you have a vision and it's been placed in your heart, you do everything you can to get there. Like, regardless of what people are going to tell you, regardless of how you feel, regardless if you wake up one day and you're like, damn, I really don't think I'm going to make it. You're going to make it if you want to make it.
There we go.
Like, you know, have that faith in yourself. But thank you for allowing me to be here. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Until next time.
Yeah. See ya.